I've worked in different things that do respond to the body. So fashion was responding to the body. And then I was tattooing for a while, which was dealing differently with the body. But then also public art is very much about how we experience public space. And public space is something that's really interesting to me because it's more accessible. People can see art in a different way, but it's also like changing space so it feels different.
We're here today for Coffee with a Creative, joined by Abbey Rich. We've just been hanging out for a couple of hours underneath Flinders Street Station, or just down here in De Grave Street in Melbourne, watching you do a really cool art installation. So thanks for having us along for a start.
Thank you. You were a good help in the end. I feel like I needed extra hands, so it worked out well.
Awesome. So just tell us a little bit about how you describe your art.
Well, I think my art is very colourful and textural. I think that's always a really funny way to describe it. I mostly describe myself as a public artist. I've mostly worked on walls, painting murals for a long time, and then now I'm kind of trying to experiment with sculpture, see where that can take me, and try and break into that part of public art.
How long have you been an artist full-time for?
I think it's about 7 years now. I was really lucky. I was like 20 at the time when Instagram was really good.
Yeah.
You know, like it was quite easy to grow. It was quite easy to find opportunities. And I think like I just rode that wave when I was like 20 and had no idea what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've been able to do it for 7 years, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. So were you working another job at the time when you decided to become a full-time artist?
Yeah, so I'd gotten a job at Coles when I was in high school, and I used to work more than I went to school. And then I kept that down in Frankston when I moved up here to go to uni. I did like a little bit of textile design at uni. And so I was working full-time at a supermarket trying to go to uni, and then also was like working on my own stuff as well as interning for a bunch of labels because I was doing fashion back in the day. And so yeah, just like got to a point where I couldn't manage all the things. I'd quit uni because it just wasn't for me, and then I quit my job too. And for the first few years I just burned through all my savings. Like I definitely didn't make money for a long time, and I was very lucky that I'd had such a stable job for a long time, and the security of a bunch of savings, because otherwise I think it would have been like impossible to do that.
So I suppose what advice would you give to someone if they wanted to just follow their creative passion and they knew that's what they wanted to do, but they had to do that, they had to just make the sacrifice along the way? Like, is there anything you'd recommend or any advice you'd give? I
also should clarify that I'm in a very privileged position, that I'm like, I have the life that I have. I'm a white person. I'm able to have made the decisions that I have because there was always something to fall back on. I think like it was very you can say work hard, take all the opportunities you get, but often like it just doesn't work that way. So I think that I'm very lucky and privileged and all those things. That advice is like, work really hard. I think just follow what you really love, but it's all good and well to say that, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So I think it's a really hard one. I think I was right place, right time for a lot of things that I did, but I've also just worked incredibly hard. For years and years I worked no week, like I just didn't have weekends, didn't have nights, like I just worked in my studio trying to like build up. So I think you've just got to be committed to working really hard, and I think that's the only thing that is like 100% integral. Everything else is like, okay, you could do this or you could do that, but at the end of the day you just got to work bloody hard.
Work hard.
Yeah.
Same applies for starting a fashion label, as you know, as well.
Yes. Too hard, some might say.
Yeah, I feel that. So, when do you feel most creative? You're doing a thing now where you're getting commissioned to do work, and you're getting paid to do your art, which is incredible. But what happens if you're just not feeling it? Do you do something to get into that space?
I'm really lucky, I think, because of the way that my practice works. Like I've built up a way of working over so many years that's like, I acknowledge that reading a book is work. I acknowledge that watching a movie is work, that having conversation with people is work. Like all of it feeds back into my work. So I think that like you know, if I'm not really feeling creative, if I stop and read for a few hours, like that's still really useful, and that's still feeding into my work, so I can kind of in my head not feel like I'm wasting time or not feel like I'm like slacking off, because it is useful.
Yeah.
And it helps me think and learn and look at things different ways. But I also find that because obviously running your own business and being your own boss, there's so much admin too.
Yeah.
So the quickest thing I think to get me creative is like, I'll switch off, do some emails for a while, and then hate that so much. So I'm like, yeah, I think I'm ready to like do some art again. My brain feels like it's working. So I think, yeah, you just got to balance all those things, and then I think it's quite easy to find that flow.
Yeah. That's nice. I think it's funny because you're like, you know, for you do that part, and it's like, God, get me back to the art now. I've done my admin email side. And I'm like, that's where I spend so much of my time working. So I'm like, can we go out and film some artists so I can like do something that isn't emails? So you said as well, and we've spoken before, and you've told me about your ventures into fashion too. You know, which isn't something that we can always have in common with the people we speak to in this. So how do you think fashion and art intersect? And I mean, is there anything for you where it still does? Is there? I know you've got your paint splattered jeans that you're wearing today. Is there anything that you wear that just gets you in that creative vibe?
It's definitely like utility vibe.
Yeah.
I think that that's the thing that makes me feel really like powerful, or like really, you know, able to move my body and to make the work that I need to make. And I think that that's really important. And like, I think it all intersects. Like a lot of the time I've worked in different things that do respond to the body. So fashion was responding to the body. And then I was tattooing for a while, which was dealing differently with the body. But then also public art is very much about how we experience public space. And public space is something that's really interesting to me because it's more accessible. People can see art in a different way, but it's also like changing space so it feels different for your body, for your safety in spaces, for like all of these different things. So I think like all of the stuff kind of revolves around it, and it's all one and the same. I think that like designing for clothing or designing for a wall or designing a sculptural work that kind of reflects bodies or something like that, I think it all kind of feeds into one another. And I think that's really that's a cool thing about fashion as well, is like you can, especially with stuff that's made to last, it's a piece of art, right? Like it's not the way that you design it, the way that you think about it, the way that you wear it, all of it, it moves with you, it becomes part of you. Like I think that's why people are so interested in these painted jeans, because it's got a story. And it's like the way that I wear these shoes, like they'll come with me for a long time and they'll wear to my feet, and it's like there's something really beautiful about that, which is like, I think it's art.
I agree. I'm hiring you to be our spokesperson, I think, and I can't wait to see our boots covered in just as much paint as those jeans.
They will be, not long, I'm sure.
Thanks so much for having us along today, inviting us to shoot it, to be in your face with all the cameras. No, really appreciate it for being part of Coffee with a Creative, and we'll catch up soon.
Anytime. Thank you.